Welcome back to another episode of the Casual GM Podcast. I'm your host, Drew, and I'm joined always by my co-host, Mike. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic today, Drew. How about yourself?
Today, I'm okay.
Today, you're okay.
Today, I'm okay.
I'm not sure how many people ended up watching our live stream on Thursday, but event-wise, it was fun. We had Brian over with my son Danny. We did our betting thing. I think we got some ideas for like how to make that a little bit more interesting next year. So anybody that watched that in the chat, let us know. Did you like it? Was it fun to watch? Would you watch it again next year? That kind of thing.
We've already discussed some changes for next year, maybe some tweaks.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my son, ever the shit talker, crushed it.
So I mean, it doesn't matter how you look at it. He won going away.
Yep.
Regardless, you know.
Yeah, dollar amount winning, quantity of correct picks.
Yeah,
I didn't get a correct pick after pick 11. That was the last time I got something right.
I think
final
I only
20 picks was just a shit show.
I mean, we got like Bryce Young correct, and I think that we got Will Anderson correct, and there were several picks, especially earlier in the draft, where we were all on the same page. But then it quickly went off the rails.
Yeah, I thought I had it. I've got a picture on my phone of what I got. I got Bryce Young. I got Will Anderson. I got shit. Was it number 8?
8 was Bijan.
Did not guess that one. I don't remember. Anyway, and then I got number 11. And then I just was off the rails. But it was a good time. So that's cool. We had a little bit of shock and awe during the draft. The Lions go to draft at 6, and all of a sudden the trade's announced, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, what are we doing?" And then we bump back. I was hoping that we would actually bump up and try to get AR.
Yeah, me too.
But once he went, which I thought for sure was going to be Will Levis. And I think Will Levis did too. I felt bad for the guy sitting in the green room the entire time for the most part. Actually, all of day one, right?
Yep.
But then we bump back to 12. I'm like, all right, let's see what we got here. And then the first real head scratcher, the draft was just full of like, where did that come from? And I remember you looking at me, Drew, going, that's not real. So I think today, I think we should just kind of go through the draft. Actually, first, want to show a shout out to our new subscriber, Brian Metzger. So, Brian, thank you for that. And hopefully we'll see you in the comment section and whatnot. But you want to start talking draft?
Yeah, I'm going to preface what I'm going to say. So, I think the Lions drafted good players, and I think that the team will be better for it. I, however, don't agree that they took the best players that they could have taken. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So, I like Jahmyr Gibbs. I like Jack Campbell.
Good way of putting it.
Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, just like, they're good players. They make us better. But like the value where they were taken, that's where we get to start going and go, what could we have done differently?
So the entirety of my argument as to why I am disappointed in this draft class has nothing to do with the players that they took, which once again, I see value in. It's that I believe that they left better players on the table at virtually every pick. And so we're going to go through that a little bit. And we're going to discuss some of the reasoning why. And then I'd be happy to be proven wrong this upcoming season, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, whatever it takes. But yeah, I've been pretty bummed out since the draft. So after the Lions finally made an effort to go out into free agency and like acquire starters, especially in the back seven, I thought, okay, we're going to take a real step here. And I thought, oh, we could take another step by having a draft class that addresses some of the other things that this maybe free agency period didn't address as well. And I don't think that they did that. You know, I still like the players that they took. I would just have preferred to have seen different players at different positions been taken at the spots where they were taking them. And I also thought that they traded extremely poorly. So we're going to get into that a little bit. I know that I'm going to disagree with Funky about at least one pick. But maybe we'll see. Maybe you guys can change my mind. So let's get into it here. We want to keep it to about an hour today. So we're gonna be covering a lot of ground. So let's just jump in. So as Mike already said, Lions were picking at 6. Okay, so here, this chart, can you make that bigger, Mike?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Yeah. So this chart represents the picks that Detroit had after each trade that they made. So they started off with 6, 18, 48, 55, 81, etc. And then they made a trade. They traded down with Arizona, and then that was a listing of their picks that they had after that trade was completed. And then the bottom number is the overall value of those picks added up together.
Using the Spielberger and Fitzgerald model. Right?
Yeah, on overthecap.com. That's right. So the Lions are here at 6. Jalen Carter's on the board. They trade back with Arizona, who came up from 12. Arizona crushed this draft, by the way. And they made a trade. So they ended up giving up 6 and 81, and they picked up like 12, 34, and like, what is it, 168.
Yep.
And so everyone was like, okay, Detroit's picking up some extra capital. If I phrased it, I'm going to phrase it a little bit differently. If you were the GM of the Lions and Arizona called you up and said, hey, we want to move up to 6 and we will give you what amounts to a 5th round pick in order to do so, would you guys have traded out of 6 out of the top 10 for an additional 5th round pick? I wouldn't have. I would have rather have taken a different player, maybe not Jalen Carter, but like a different player at 6 than I would have moving out of 6 in order to just pick up an additional 5th round pick. It's just
the difference is that 500 points, right? Right here.
Yeah, it's about.
And when we look at that. Yeah, we'll say 500-ish.
Yeah.
492, right? So when we go back over here and take a look at 492, we're looking at the pick 141.
Right.
Right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 picks into the 5th round is essentially what we gained by that.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
Because we lost a ton of value going from 6 to 12.
Correct.
That's where people, I think, miss well, how could we have only gained a 5th round pick? Because after all, we got 34, right? That's a 2nd rounder. We lost a ton of value going from 6 to 12 because those are typically 2 different tiers of players.
Yeah, the difference between 6 and 12 is 350 points, almost exactly. So
yeah,
it's a huge drop back. So okay, so then Detroit's at 12. Other players are selected. Detroit's on the clock. They take Jahmyr Gibbs, running back from Alabama. And my balloon got popped. I'm sorry. Like
that's when you looked at me and you're like, "This isn't real, is it?"
I like the player. He's great. He's just not the 12th overall pick.
Yeah,
he's just not
dynamic.
The 12th overall pick.
He's going to add stuff. I think he can be a Deebo Samuel type guy where we're going to run him, we're going to toss him in the slot, and I think he can really make our offense dynamic. But there's that opportunity cost of we could have taken somebody else and gotten a dynamic run, even if he bumped back to 18, right? And we take Campbell with 34. Just
right.
Ugh.
So, and let's be very clear. In order for this pick at this spot to be quote unquote worth it, he has to be Deebo Samuel. Like, it's not okay. It's not okay for him to not produce at that level and just be a backup running back or a running back by committee and be the 12th overall pick.
Yeah, Jason over the cap mentioned that Texans and Lions basically need all of our draft picks to hit in the upper end of the projections for their slots to make the drafts make any sense. If he's not Deebo Samuel, then we didn't. Then we lose.
You lost value there.
Lost value. That's a better way of putting it.
Yeah,
we didn't lose. We lost value.
It's not that he's a bad player if he doesn't live up to Deebo Samuel, but like, the only way that pick at that spot makes any logical sense is if he is Deebo Samuel. Yep. Also, one other thing about Deebo Samuel, one of the reasons why he's such a value is because, yes, he's this hybrid running back wide receiver that's super productive in that particular offense, but he was a late second round pick. Like, with the difference between him and Jahmyr Gibbs is that you have to expect him to do those things when he starts. Deebo Samuel was not expected to do it. And then when he accomplished those things, he became more valuable. Otherwise, he would have been a first-round pick too. So the difference is, value. Yeah, Funky. Like, it's value matters. Like, when you have the same amount of money to spend as every other team in the NFL, and you have the NFL gives every team the same draft picks, 7 draft picks every year. It's about how you use those resources and whether you're maximizing or giving value back as to, I mean, like, does anybody remember when Matt Millen took 3 wide receivers in the first round in consecutive years or whatever it was?
I tried to forget the lost decade.
I mean,
don't bring it up.
That's giving value back. I remember Jordan Dizon being a second round pick at linebacker. That's giving value back. Like, because those guys didn't work out because they're overdrafted. Yeah, it's in the eye of the beholder, I suppose, but like, there's also, it's not just art.
It's not just the eye of the beholder. Yeah, it's also because it does have cap implications. It's not just value is in the eye of the beholder. It's also in the eye of our accountant and our ability to manage the cap successfully.
Yeah, I mean, and like, we have talked about, especially with the running backs, first round running backs, like, when you select those guys at a certain spot, like, you are paying them more than what you could have otherwise have gotten similar production for later in the draft. So, I mean, like, there's a reason why kickers don't go in the first round. Now, maybe they go in the third round this year. That was still an overdraft. That's still because you can use that pick on a quote unquote more valuable player. A kicker is going to do how many snaps does a kicker line up for? 12 in a game?
That's to me, that's one of the weird things about kickers is they are routinely the highest scoring player on the team.
Sure.
But yet they're so valued so lowly. Why is that when they score the majority of the points in the team?
There's a ton of them for the market. You don't have any trouble finding them. Right? So like there's 112 Division I football programs. If 1/4 of them have a kicker come out every year, that's what, 25, 30 kickers a year. And there's 32 teams.
Yeah.
So Funky, I don't really understand your position here. Like, if you don't if you can't see the idea that like a quarterback is more valuable than another position, I don't know what we're doing. Like there is a reason why quarterbacks go at the top end of the first round year in, year out, basically. So, I mean, like, to me, like your argument, like your stance, like, like laugh out loud, more valuable player to who? You, me, question mark. So, like, to me, that stance is the stance that got Sebastian Janikowski drafted in the first round. To me, that stance is, okay, we're totally fine with Saquon Barkley at 2.
It's a mix between the value they bring on the field and the cost that they are charged against the cap, right? So if you have a position that brings, we'll say running backs, for example, where many times you don't have an actual workhorse running back. There's a couple teams that do. Travis Henry was, the Colts had a workhorse running back, but most of the time it's running back by committee. You've got 2 guys, sometimes 3 or 4, which means you're now splitting carries. DeAndre Swift got maybe 12 carries a game. That's not much. So now you've got a position that's only touching the ball maybe 15% of offensive snaps. Well, how valuable can that possibly be compared to a quarterback who touches it every snap, or a wide receiver that gets more targets or more yards per target, right? So there's that kind of positional production value. And then, of course, there's the cap.
Right.
And I don't know what it is for this year, but last year, the 12th overall pick, which happened to be Jameson Williams, was $19.1 million contract. That's $4 million a year.
Right.
That doubled the amount of money we threw into our running back room.
Right. And like,
that's absurd.
The Chiefs, to answer some of Funky's like ridiculous arguments here that he's making, is that the Chiefs don't need to take a quarterback, Funky. They have one. You don't need to continue to draft that position. Right. I know you know that. Why you put that in the chat, I don't understand. But like this draft, this was so horrible at the top end, your value chart doesn't apply. That's ridiculous. I mean, like, that's not a reason to say like it's okay that you take a running back at 12. So like, let's look at the end of the season, right? The end of the season, you had Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. Like, you had your first 1,000-yard runner, and who knows how long. The running game was effective almost all year long. They scored a ton based upon their running game. That's what Ben Johnson's good at, right? So what did they do in free agency? They went out and signed a running back to $6 million a year to replace Jamal Williams. I would say that's an upgrade.
Yep.
Right. I would say that David Montgomery is a better running back than Jamal Williams is. Okay, fine. Jamal Williams' contract was up. He wasn't on the team next year. You replaced him with a better player. That's great. But then, like, you then use the 12th overall pick to share carries with that guy, to share snaps, even if he's going to line up in the slot. So, like, you invested incredibly heavily in a backfield that had worked last year. Yeah, thanks, man. I really appreciate that. That, man.
Don, I know he's like, this overvalue take is fading fast. See talent, get talent, period. I mean, does that mean we take Jake Moody, the best kicker in college football, with 18? He's talented. Our kicker is not very good. Badgley is not particularly good. We're not going to do it. Why? Because there's no value there, or limited value. Later on, down the road, you could potentially pick him with a later round pick. It's not just get talent, see talent, get talent. Yes, you want that, right? You don't want to take anybody that's not talented. So, duh. Right. Like, in that regard. But like, you still have to do it in the places that you need help.
Right. Like, I get it, Monkey. Like, they can't make a bad pick, right? Like, whomever the Detroit Lions draft was just a smart pick, regardless of where they picked it, whatever year it was, whatever position it was, for whatever reason. As long as they're wearing a Detroit Lions helmet, it's a good pick, right? Because we trust in Brad Holmes. So just blind faith equals good pick. I get it. So there you go. I mean, like, if that's your take, then this maybe not the the show for you. You know, so like, because we're going to talk about like ways to try and make the Detroit Lions rosters better. And like, I get it. What did Don just say? Don just said something here like, where did he scroll up a little bit here? This overvalue take is fading fast. See talent, get talent, period. So like, yeah, that's fine. Well, I mean, you put words in my mouth, dude. So I mean, like, what are we doing here? If you want to treat me like that, maybe, I mean, it's a two-way street. So like, did they get talent? I'm not saying they didn't get talent. I'm saying I think they left more talent on the table by the guys they did take where they took them.
Right. I didn't say that's ultimately what it is. It's not like Gibbs isn't going to be good.
Right.
It doesn't mean he's not going to add something to our team.
Right.
We could have gotten him at 18.
Right. That's my point.
We could have probably gotten him at 34.
Maybe. Now, I know there's reports
we could have taken like a Charbonnet or something that was also a speedster that could run at 34, right?
Yeah.
And well, what's the opportunity cost there? We could have gotten Christian Gonzalez at 12 and saved the running back for 34 and gotten Gibbs if he fell to there, or Charbonnet if he didn't. And now I'm sitting here with a draft that has Christian Gonzalez, one of the top 2 cornerbacks in the class. And we've only got, I think, 1 cornerback on our team or 2 cornerbacks that is on the team for more than 2 years or for more than 1 year or something. So we've got depth there. We got depth in years, right? So I would take a Christian Gonzalez at 12, even if you went with Jack Campbell at 18 and Gibbs or Charbonnet at 34. That's still just a better first 3 picks.
Right.
In my opinion, right?
They also don't have a cornerback, I think, other than Jerry Jacobs and Cam Sutton on the roster at cornerback next year. I mean, like, this was an opportunity that the Lions had to build some more depth, but instead we decided to lock up the running game. And maybe, you know, and like what's going to happen is week 1, Jahmyr Gibbs is gonna break off some crazy run on like a 4-yard check down from Jared Goff, and the chat's gonna blow up at me and they're gonna say, "See, he's awesome," you know, and I'm gonna agree with you guys about it because yeah, he probably is going to be awesome, but like he doesn't stop the run. I mean, like Detroit's offense was 8th last year without Jahmyr Gibbs. And you were gonna, well, if you hadn't gambled, like if you were gonna get Jamison Williams back for a full 18 games, hopefully. Yeah. So like it was like he was going to be another first-round pick this year, until he got suspended. But like, I mean, like it's a lot to invest in that particular position group, money plus draft picks, to have 2 guys there when you had 2 guys who were effective last year.
Right. And Donnie, you're right. Like, we don't know if we could have gotten this player at 18. We don't know if he would have fallen because he was gone after 12. We don't know. We can make assumptions and we could be wrong. But at the same time, we could have gotten there's a handful of running backs that we could have taken at 34. Maybe it's not Gibbs. Maybe it's not even Charbonnet. And you mentioned Charbonnet's not Gibbs. He's closer to Montgomery. Cool. We're adding a running back by committee person anyway. So I'm not sure how much this guy needs to be super special for it to make any sense at all. So right. You're right. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how he's going to end up being. I think they did it in part because we've got a quarterback right now that's kind of puts on his captain check down hat and he checks down a lot. This is going to be a security blanket for him. And I think that's also why we took Laporta when we get to that pick. I think he's going to be a little bit of a security blanket for him.
So there's 3
he wanted explosiveness. That's what Swift is.
Right. I know people are going to vilify Swift because, quote unquote, he's hurt all the time. So therefore, he never did anything good for the Detroit Lions in the 3 years that he was here. And that's just not true. I mean, like, DeAndre Swift, for all the reasons that either the Detroit Lions organization or their fans don't seem to like DeAndre Swift, there are moments in each of his 3 seasons where it's like, wow, that guy he really did a great job. Yeah. And he is explosive. I mean, like, Brian 3
What's up, Brian?
Hey, Brian.
So yeah, I think we're kind of harping on what, again, we're not saying Gibbs is going to be bad, right? He's going to be a good player. He's going to make our team better.
Golf does
we're not
check down a
that.
lot. Right. So this
Golf
thing
does
that
not
Mark
check down a lot. What are you talking about, Joey?
He
had the 32nd. His average depth of target was 32nd in the league. How could that not be just indicative of the number of times he throws short? If you're throwing short that much, you're checking down.
I wonder if he is not a long ball thrower.
No.
I mean, what Jared Goff is good at are timing routes in the intermediate section of the field. That's what Jared Goff is good at. And so, like,
5 to 15
that is
yards.
fine. But he checks down a lot. I mean, he throws to the running back a lot. Like, he throws to a safety or a release valve a lot. Now, it might be less when Jameson Williams is finally back on the field. But but it's mid to short. I mean, like, he is not a deep ball thrower. Yes, I understand that his average depth of target was not 32nd. It's not great either.
It was in the 30s. It might not have been 32nd, but it was in the 30s.
It's not good. Like, I think what we can all agree on is that he is not a long ball thrower, right? That's not what he excels at. And so, like, what I want to talk about is what Mark is saying here. Holmes got the guys he wanted, no matter the board crap. It's who he wanted, and he got them. So what? I mean, like, what does that matter? If he got the players that, like, what that he does that apply to Aiden Hutchinson last year, to Jameson Williams last year, to, like, Penei Sewell? Like, that, to me, that doesn't mean anything. So he liked them the best. He wanted to play cards with them the most. I don't know what that means. Like, there's a difference in opinion no matter who you are. Like, you happen to agree with, like, apparently you really like the guys. Joey, do you honestly want to sit here and say that Jared Goff is a good throwing the ball down the field? Because I've watched all of the games that he's played since he got to Detroit. Like, he's an intermediate thrower. Like, my point is that we have a GM who has changed the way the NFL looks at drafting. I hope these 1960 takes need to go, and mock drafts have ruined the offseason. Are you serious? The 1960s takes is that very idea that, like, everyone is lauding him for. Let's not argue about Jared Goff right now.
Yeah. I'm going to throw this up here. Last year's regular season, when you filter out all the wide receivers that threw passes and whatnot, you have to 20% of the dropbacks, average depth of target. Let me keep scrolling until I find Jared Goff at 30.
Okay,
we're done.
But, like, so, when you talk about a player coming out in the draft that your team has selected, and it's because he's the guy that you wanted, or he's just a football guy or whatever, that's the same stuff that Mike Ditka was talking about in 1985. And, like, there's still part of that that's true about, you know, adding players to your team. Like, you want to add players to your team that you think are going to, you know, contribute. But, like, I just don't think that they did that. Funky, dude. Like, this podcast is about, like, figuring out the way that we think is the best way to add talent to the team. Okay. Like, I get that they drafted the guy that you liked, but, like, now you're just kind of lording it over everybody. And I just disagree with it. I never said that I didn't like the guys.
Right.
But, like,
we kind of started off by saying that, like, these guys are going to be good players.
Yeah,
we just disagreed with where
I prefaced the whole thing by saying I think the guys they drafted are good football players.
Right.
Right. But, like, I still think that doesn't mean that they were the best football players on the board that they could have potentially drafted. Right. I have a different take on that.
Yeah.
So, like, you can either listen to my take or you can keep giving me shit for it. I don't appreciate it, but sure, go right ahead. So, like, at 18, they take Jack Campbell. That's fine. I've heard Detroit Lions fans refer to him as a unicorn, or a player that is so unique physically that he doesn't fit into any kind of box. I don't know. I see a good linebacker. So, like, here's what the Lions did at linebacker. They re-signed Alex Anzalone for $6 million a year, and then they drafted a first-round pick at linebacker who plays the exact same position as Alex Anzalone. So let me ask you this question, Mike.
Rodrigo, like, play very well last year, right? So
exactly, right?
We didn't need depth at that point, right? At least not at that position. We got it, so I guess that's good. And maybe they were drafting for the future where they're like, okay, well, Anzalone's guaranteed money isn't that much. And if we think this guy's going to replace him pretty quickly, take him now. Like, I guess I can see that. But even then, granted, we got Brian Branch at what, 48, 45. So, but even then, Brian Branch was expected to go far earlier than that. I think we're kind of lucky that we got him at 45, and pretty thrilled, to be honest.
Yeah. So
the most valuable, like, best value pick possibly of any team in the draft, to be honest.
So let me ask you this, Mike. Let's run through the defenses real quick, like the back seven.
Mm-hmm.
So you would got, and you guys let me know if you think that this is wrong. These are I would say the week one starters, assuming that there's no injuries between now and week one. You'd have Tracy Walker and Kirby Joseph at safety. You'd have Cam Sutton, and you'd have Emmanuel Mosley at corner, and then you'd have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in the slot, right? And so then that's five guys. You're probably playing a 4-down line. So that leaves you 2 spots. So you're going to not play Malcolm Rodriguez so that you can play Alex Anzalone and Jack Campbell. When did Malcolm Rodriguez lose his spot on this team for bad play? I don't understand it. Like,
probably the moment I watched Jack Campbell.
Right. Like, I watched Hard Knocks where he outplayed everyone in the room except Alex Anzalone to be a starter. So, like, this is the other problem that I had with the first round, is that, like, they signed 2 guys in the offseason to play these same spots. You know, like, you have Rodrigo, but now are you going to put him on the bench because you paid Anzalone and you drafted Jack Campbell? That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Campbell will have to win the spot.
Yeah, maybe.
And then if he doesn't, and Rodrigo is still the guy, now you drafted someone at 18 that couldn't even win the spot.
So, like, if that's the case, then they're investing very heavily in these positions, both in free agency and the draft. And I hope that, I know that a lot of NFL teams are out there winning because they're running backs and linebackers. So, every year you just see another deep playoff push because, the Philadelphia's linebackers and running backs won the day, But, then you get to 34, and this is the pick that we got from the Arizona trade. And Michael Mayer's sitting there on the board, and you take Sam Laporta. And I just think that Michael Mayer is just a better tight end prospect than Sam Laporta. But here's the thing that Sam Laporta does better than Michael Mayer. And this is the same thing that Jahmyr Gibbs is good at, and it's the same thing that David Montgomery is good at. They make guys miss. They break tackles. That if there's one, a golden thread for what the Lions did in this offseason when it comes to offensive skill position players, they very clearly want guys who can make a tackler miss. Right? That's the thing that Laporta, Montgomery, and Gibbs all have in common, is they break tackles, and they're all probably going to be on the field at the same time. So I think that the idea that you're going to have Jared Goff throwing to Gibbs and Laporta in that intermediary side of the field, or you could hand the ball off to either Gibbs or Montgomery, depending on who's in the game, they're probably going to make that first guy miss, or they're going to do it a lot. Right. And like, I think that there's value in that too. But like, I don't think that that is a reason to take Laporta over a guy like Michael Mayer just to pick a guy at the same position at the top of the second round.
I want to kind of touch on something that I think it was Don had mentioned. Sure. He said to me, the positional value take is just pure dumb.
Sure.
And I want to touch on that a little bit because obviously that analytics is what drives positional value, right? We have to do analytics on what different positions bring to a team, what the cost is. So the question, I think, comes down to how much does analytics matter, right? And one thing I'd like to kind of point out is I do with my work, I do a lot with Amazon Web Services, right? And the NFL Next Gen Stats, they're all powered by AWS. And one of the things that we talk, like Seattle, this is just a good example. Probably not very ironic or surprising, considering that's also where Amazon's headquartered is in Seattle. But they do a ton of analytics in the cloud with AWS. They do, and there was actually a really interesting article here about what's one of the secrets to building a successful draft class. Well, we sat down with Seattle Seahawks head of research and analytics. That's what they do, right? All of the draft is based on analytics, positional value, and doing those kinds of things. This isn't something that we kind of came up with and decided was a cool thing. Teams are having entire departments focused on research, analytics, and how to use machine learning to identify better schemes, everything from better schemes to how do I keep my players healthy? How do I draft properly? So like, I understand that you don't like the positional value take, but every football team has this, and they're using technology to increase the amount of analytics in the decision-making in what they do. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there because I found this, I actually read this, and there was a couple other blog articles on Amazon's blog about how they do it, and it's pretty amazing. But analytics is not a thing that we're just talking about because every team is doing it, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger piece to successful NFL teams.
Right. And like the thing that I'd added to that, Mike, is that analytics are based upon the behavior that the NFL exhibits. It's not made up numbers to look smart. So like when we talk about positional value, what determines positional value is basically like how much money the entire NFL is paying to the players at these particular positions. And if you go and you look at quarterbacks, tackles, edge rushers, they make the most money at the top of their markets compared to other positions. Running backs make the least. So like positional value is not me sitting up here saying, I think wide receivers are the fourth most important position in the NFL. All I'm doing is saying the NFL thinks that wide receivers are the fourth most valuable position in the game because of the amount of money they dedicate to acquiring those players. So like, well, I think that, Joey, positional value is subjective financially because like it's going to be subjective based upon the position that you play, right? That's what gives it the value. So like, and we've talked about this in previous episodes. So like the Carolina Panthers take Bryce Young at number 1 this year, right? So like we saw Jalen Hurts and then Lamar Jackson sign the biggest and then the next biggest quarterback contracts, per year, average per year, what have you, within a couple of weeks of one another. 51 and 52, I think, $1 million annually. So like the Carolina Panthers take Bryce Young at number 1, and he might be making $11 million, annually. Now he's certainly not up to Bryce Young and Lamar Jackson's range, but like, I think that the difference in like talent between Lamar Jackson Jalen Hurts and Bryce Young is smaller than what they're being paid to play for their teams. And so that savings is going to let the Carolina Panthers go out and spend that money in other places until they have to pay him a contract like that.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't think Detroit's draft is awful. All I'm saying is I think if they were looking to maximize the kind of value that we talk about on this podcast, I don't think they did a good job in this draft. I think they did a great job in the previous 2 drafts, and maybe they'll do a great job of it next year. But like, whether it was the trades, whether it was the players, at what pick they took them. What's he say? Yeah. So Joey, yes, to answer your question, like, the NFL literally determines the value of each position by what they pay each position on average. Right. So like, relaying that fact is not subjective, right? Like relaying that, like, the quarterback market is in the, low 50s right now. That's not a subjective fact. Like we can pull that up and look at the contracts, right? What is subjective is like position by position what they're worth. Financially, wide receivers are more valuable than the running backs. That's not subjective. Correct. Right. We're yes. Okay. We're on the same page.
And when you start looking at the rookie wage scale, which is also a dictated, this is what you're doing.
Right.
When you take somebody at 12, you're mandated to pay them a specific amount of money. So if you're paying, would you rather pay $4 million for a wide receiver who is more valuable than a running back, or $4 million for a running back?
Right.
Right. So like, if you're going to pay him $4 million, I want to pay the one that normally is worth $7 million, not the one that's normally worth $2 million, because now I'm overpaying by default. And I think that's kind of what we're getting at on that. So, and I do want to say shout out to Don. It's a good show, guys. Just difference of opinion. That's what makes a good podcast. That's one of the things we want to have, like a dialogue, and we're not name calling, tell them, you're not stupid. We're not stupid. So I like the fact that you guys can have different opinions out in the chat, and we're all cool with it. And we're all just talking about what we think and how we can, we're all Lions fans, right? We all want just the Lions to do better. So, yeah.
And like, I think that they win the division and probably a playoff game this year. And like, I think that this class will help. But like, if you went back and like redid the draft, and they had a draft that was like Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Jack Campbell at 34, assuming Jack Campbell was there, or if it was something like Christian Gonzalez, Brian Branch, Jack Campbell, or something like that. Like, I think that gets you closer to that playoff win than Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta. Like, even though those 2 guys are probably going to be really solid players, and like they're on the team for 4 years, at minimum, and like another thing we've talked about before is that, like, at least with the 2 first round guys, like you can pick up their 5th year options and they're still good deals. So like, I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions picked up the options on Gibbs and Campbell in 2027, 28, something like that.
Yep. Although, since you did bring up Brian Branch, I will say it really endeared me to him when he stuck through it in the green room until his name was called, and he didn't just go home and said, I didn't make day one, screw it, I'm going home. There was somebody else in the room with him on day one that didn't make it, and he left. And Brian Branch is like, you know what? This is a once in a lifetime thing. I felt that should have been a first rounder. I didn't. I'm still going to experience this, and I want to do this. I thought that said a lot to me about his character, and I loved that. So props to Brian Branch to, it could have been like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. I'm not going to go out at whatever I get picked, and went home and just waited for a call. But he's like, nope, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to see this thing out. I'm not a quitter. And I love that. So.
Yeah. So they pick up Brian Branch, and then the next pick is Hendon Hooker. And I mean, I don't have anything against Hendon Hooker personally, but like the dude had one 11-game stretch in 6 years in college, and that's what he's getting drafted on. I mean, so like I like having him as a backup, give him a year to heal, learn the offense, that kind of thing. But like I think he has a bigger learning curve than Anthony Richardson because his offense in the NFL cannot be run. You cannot play the Tennessee offense in the NFL. It's physically not possible. So like I think Hendon Hooker's a good player, and like if he's finally coming to his own, I think he'll be 26 when the season starts. Like that's fine, I don't think it prevents you from doing anything else at the quarterback position. So, we've heard that they've entered into, or at least had exploratory talks about contract extensions with Goff, and like if they extend Jared Goff, I might just go back to being a Ravens fan. I mean, fuck it.
I mean, he needs to. If we do, he better win the division, win a playoff game.
I mean, that's the first. I mean, like if that doesn't happen this season, so just on the natural progression of the team, like I mean, just like adding any draft class, adding any free agency class. I mean, this team came in the first year; they had a 3-win season. They had 6 additional wins in the second season. That's awesome. Like that's huge progress, and especially that stretch in the second half of the season last year where they were 8-2. Like that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like I think any team in the NFL would be like, you can tell me we're going to go 8-2 over our last 10 games. Sign me up. Like I'll take the 2 losses. And if it wasn't for that just horrendous start to the season, like the Lions probably make the playoffs last year if they just won one more game, in the first 7 or 8. But like at this point with Aaron Rodgers leaving the division and just the stuff that like has gone on in Minnesota, like I think that like winning the division is the expectation, I think this year, right? Like even if you have a year like you did last year where it was like 9 possibly 10 wins, I think that's good enough to win the division this next year. I think Green Bay will be worse just for the change.
Yep.
I think Chicago is going to get a little bit better, but I don't think they're going to get 6 wins better.
Right.
And I think Minnesota's on a decline, but it's a slight decline.
Yeah. They play a toad and maybe just the start of a dip.
So Don Burr says here, I think the extension is coming for sure, and the longer you wait, the more expensive it will get to extend Goff if he plays well. So like to me, when I read that, what I hear is like that you're going to pay him top of the market money, like 45 plus. So I mean, like, Funky, he spent like 6 years in college, man. Come on. I mean, like, I get there was a COVID year and all that stuff, but like he played a full career at Virginia Tech and then played 2 years at Tennessee. Like the dude is.
Yeah, but I mean, like
he's not a 21-year-old coming out. I mean,
no, but I mean, at the same time, if our window is the next 4 years, then if he's 26, 27, 28, 29, NBD, right?
Sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that. I mean, like the one thing that I think that really puts his future back with the Lions is if Ben Johnson is not the OC next year. If this is Ben Johnson's last season in Detroit, then Hendon Hooker is going to heal up, learn this offense, and then have an OC change unless the guy's going to run the exact same scheme that Ben Johnson
I think that's I'm actually on the opposite camp because I think that if this is Ben Johnson's last year, Ben Johnson was able to get far more out of Goff than anybody else did. Right? I mean, he was able to dial back the downfield. Yes. Like once he took over, right? He's like, I'm going to dial back the long throws. You are not accurate downfield. So he dials that back. He stops throwing interceptions. He's making those short ones. Like he really kind of dialed into get away from his flaws and focus on the things that he does well. Yeah. And he thrived. If Ben Johnson leaves, I think we're going to see a big decline back into the Goff that was declining in LA and the way he was before, his first season and 7 games in Detroit.
Yeah.
That opens things up for Hooker. I think if OC goes away and somebody else comes in and they're like, you've got this guy that can pass the ball downfield and also run, and he's not a pylon, I'd like to work with that. So I think if Ben Johnson leaves, I think that's actually good for Hooker and bad for Goff.
Yes. So, like, I would rather see a healthy Hendon Hooker this year than Jared Goff, because the one thing that Hendon Hooker does that Jared Goff can't do, like, I don't know what it would look like to have them both throw the balls. Like, Hendon Hooker is good at throwing the balls to either sideline. Like, that's his heat map. Like, he is good throwing the ball outside the numbers. Like, that's what Tennessee wanted him to do. He did a good job of it. The intermediate middle of the field, they didn't ask him to do that much. Yeah. Jared Goff is the opposite. Jared Goff throws in the middle of the field the majority of the time. So, like, I do think that they're very different stylistically. And if Hendon Hooker can do what Jared Goff does, plus be mobile, like, assuming his ACL is fine, and, like, he comes back and has control of the offense, then, like, he adds a wrinkle that allows you to run RPOs. So, like, that would be excellent with, like, the David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs backfield. And, like, I think that works better with a guy like Laporta than, like, the offense under Jared Goff. So, like, I'm all for it, because, like, the Hendon Hooker style of don't do it. You did it once. Don't do it. Just don't do it. So, like, the Hendon Hooker.
I'm just correcting Joey is all. You're the top of the league in 20.
Come on, we were already
deep passing throws. Where is he? Let me keep. Oh, there he is. 20.
It's fine. Okay, that's it. So,
Sorry.
like, I
Sorry,
like
Joey.
the style of Hendon Hooker better than I do the style of Jared Goff. It's just like, what does the acclimation process for Hendon Hooker look like once he's healthy? So, like, his deep accuracy is not great. So that's my thing. Like, I think Hendon Hooker would be fine. I do not want to pay Jared Goff $45 million a year plus, even if it lowers his cap number. Like, I think Detroit is not going to have a Super Bowl window until they have a QB on a rookie deal. If that's Hendon Hooker, neato. I would rather have Hendon Hooker plus Jared Goff's salary than Jared Goff on the team, because you now have the ability to go and continue to build the roster.
Yeah,
that's what the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts, right? So, like, the parallels between Jalen Hurts and Hendon Hooker are not that dissimilar. They are both mobile quarterbacks who are going to add a dynamic to their offenses that you can't easily add to your team. And if you can get those guys on rookie deals for starting quarterbacks 2, 3, 4 years or whatever, that's your Super Bowl window. That's what we've seen over the last 10 years. So, like, do I think that the window opens with Jared Goff? I don't. But, like, it's not because Goff is a horrific quarterback. He's not. He's an NFL starting quarterback. But, like, the amount of money that you're currently paying him hinders their ability to continue to go and add to the roster. So, like, what we've seen them do in the offseason, they signed Cam Sutton and David Montgomery and Alex Anzalone to deals that incorporated void years on the back end of it right off the bat. So they're technically, like, Cam Sutton is signed for like 5 years because he's got 2 void years worked into the back end of his contract. So, like, they're already adding those small dead cap hits into their contract negotiations. So, like, one way to combat that, and they're not going to have $30 million of dead cap hits built into the cap on a year by year basis. But what I'm saying is that you're giving back like $1 million here, $2 million there. You get Hendon Hooker starting, and you're paying him a couple $1 million. That's better financially for the continued growth of the roster.
So, Joey said,
"You gotta stop."
You know what? He's like, you're not correcting anything. He's like, Goff was second in completions of over 20 yards. All right, deep passing over 20 yards. Number of completions, he was at 14th. He had 23. Great. Completion percentage, he was at 13th, a little bit better. Turnover worthy play percentage, he was 8th, tied for 8th. Big time throw percentage. Let me scroll.
Right. The number
there he is, 31st. Like, I'm not sure what on deep passing, Goff was not good. He was at best 13th or 14th.
Don says, Drew, you have to see the Detroit Lions forum video talking about extending Goff. I thought the dude would jump out of the chair. So Don, in all seriousness, I literally can't stomach sitting there and watching David Pike speak. Like it physically hurts my guts to sit there and listen to him talk because it's just insane. I imagine that he got the smile left his face when they drafted Hendon Hooker. I would have liked to have seen that. Is that out on video? I mean, I would happily let Hendon Hooker take over this team. I mean, it's not my choice, but like if Hendon Hooker takes over this team and all that happens is that David Pike freaks out and loses his shit, that's worth it right there. That's worth it right there. I mean, no. I mean, Funky's got to love that part at least. I mean, like, my issues with Hendon Hooker. Homeboy looked like someone ran over his dog when they drafted him. That's awesome. I'm just really sad that you guys are out there watching his stuff. Rooting for QB to shut the dude up. I know, right? I mean, like,
God, Anthony Richardson would have been so great. I was super disappointed. Like, my dream draft was either Richardson falls to 6, or I would have been fine trading up to say 3 or 4 to grab him.
Yeah.
We'd have to go to 3 because I don't think Indy would have traded, right? So like going up to 3 to get him, that would have been my dream draft right there.
So speaking of dream draft, that's a good way to
we only got a couple minutes. So let's do our opportunity cost draft. Like what could it have been?
Okay, I'll run through this real quick, but I want to talk about Arizona for a minute or two at the end. Okay, so I've got 2 scenarios. What the draft could have looked like with the Arizona trade and without the Arizona trade. Okay, so we're going to do without the Arizona trade first. Here's what here's what was available that I might have taken. Jalen Carter at 6, Deontay Banks or Nolan Smith at 18. Let's say Banks. Then they could have still made the trade up for Brian Branch. And then at 63, Cedric Tillman and Hendon Hooker were still on the board. So depending on which guy you would have preferred there.
Hooker, thank you. Go.
So, I mean, like, no, I don't have – I'm just going to do through day 2.
Okay.
I would have went Camabell there for Banks. I don't know what Camabell is. Cannonball. Okay, so let's do one with the Arizona trade. So this one we moved off of 6.
All right.
So with the Arizona trade, you could have had Christian Gonzalez at 12, Nolan Smith, and like, you know, if this was you guys picking, like Jack Campbell or Jahmyr Gibbs could have been in these spots. Michael Mayer at 34. You could have had Branch or Keanu Benton at 45, and at 55, which we traded to the Chiefs, you could have had Rashee Rice, Osiris Torrance, or Trenton Simpson. So, like, between those options, so, like, here's my issue. Like, who do you guys think is the right guard next year? Is it Vaitai or is it Glasgow? It's got to be one of those two, right? So, like, we didn't add much in the way of, like, a starting right guard. So that, to me, tells me they're comfortable with the guys they have on the roster. They didn't really add a defensive tackle, like a 3 technique. They added that guy from was it Western Kentucky, Broderick Martin? But he projects more as a pass rusher than a run stopper. So I was looking for them to add someone next to McNeil that could do that. So like I look at like two of these drafts and like I think that these address the problems that Detroit had last season more than the ones they have this than what they drafted for. So like I think that like if you can get the defense from like I think it was like 28th per PFF last season to like 20th, I think you go from like 9 wins to like 11 wins pretty easily. So like
especially with the other guys and the other teams in our division kind of taking a drop off.
Precisely. So like,
well, Chicago's not. They're going to go up, but they were terrible. So
they were terrible.
They're going up doesn't mean they're going to win a game against us.
He is totally a nose tackle, Joey, which is why like when I looked him up, like they took him like 90 spots above where he was ranked on the consensus board. And I get it, right? Like the Lions board was certainly different than the consensus board, but like they also traded super generously with, I think it was Denver, or no, it was Arizona the second time. So like, okay, so if Martin is a nose tackle, is it Liam McNeil? Are they starting both of those guys together?
Yeah, whoever wins the battle.
So like to me, like I looked at that pick as like you moved up and you moved up heavy. Like you doubled the cost of the pick that you acquired to get it. And then you took Martin. Okay, so like if Martin is Aleem McNeil's backup, I don't like that pick because they needed a 3 technique, not a backup nose tackle. So like, is Isaiah Buggs the starting 3 technique on this team? So like, I don't know, like that's just something to think about. Like these 3. So you guys think that Aleem is a 3 tech? I've always viewed him as a nose tackle. So these 2 guys play together is what you guys are saying. Like these 2 guys are in line to be starters next to each other, right? That's okay. So the defensive line looks something like Hutchinson, McNeil, Martin, Okwara. Who's the other edge rusher?
Houston or Pascal.
But okay. So like, so who do you so Hutchinson,
Pascal,
McNeil, Martin, Pascal.
Yeah, possibly Okwara. I mean, Romeo Okwara is still on the team, right? So
he is on the team.
Probably him unless Pascal beats him out.
Martin and Buggs on the nose tackles. Aleem starting 3 technique because Levi. Oh, okay. Depends on
Wazirike. He might be back too. He's sounds like he's recovering and
was in good shape. Was the note that I heard in Lions media.
This is what we actually got. Column J there. Gibbs, Campbell, Laporta, Branch, and Hooker. We could have had Gonzalez, Nolan Smith, Mayer, even if he swapped and did Laporta and on a personal preference kind of thing. But Gonzalez, Smith, Mayer, Branch, and either Rashee Rice, Osiris Torrance, or Trenton Simpson.
Yeah, I think which
one of these would you guys rather have, right?
Well, I think they're going to pick the one the Lions actually did. But to me, the middle column there, the one that starts with Gonzalez, is the one that helps them both short term and long term more. And I mean,
D likes column H, by the way.
Oh, that was I also was partial to column H. Detroit. Mike and I might have been yelling at each other about that particular pick prior to the podcast,
but for no more than 30 minutes.
Yeah, just 30 minutes or so. Yeah, I think Mark makes a good point here. Like he says, I think the coaching staff will put the players in a position to succeed. I agree with that, which is one of the reasons why I am comfortable with the guys that they drafted, because I do think that they will be contributors. But once again, I'll just reiterate, like my issue is I think that there were better players for this team on the table at most of their picks. And they decided to go with the guys that they took, right? That makes a lot of sense. But like, I just don't know that what their class this year. I've heard it described as like it's the class that's like the glue class. Like not a lot of these guys are going to be off the roster in 4 years, right? Like, I don't think that that's going to happen at all. I think that these guys are going to be players that you're going to see on the Detroit Lions for like the near future, like 4 to 8 years. Like, I think that would be a solid indication of what this class is going to look like for the Lions in the long term. But like, I also think that these picks are safe picks. Like, there doesn't appear to be a lot of risk in these picks, and not that the more risk the better, but I think that there are times where it's appropriate to take a risk at this position or at this point in the draft for a player that you think can really help you to accelerate your team. So,
all right. Final thought. 30 seconds. Final thought.
Arizona fucking crushed this draft. So they traded out of 3. They picked up Houston's first round pick next year. They have 2 legit chances to get the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft. If that draft has Caleb Williams in it, to me, they're moving on from Kyler Murray. So then they would have another probably top 5 pick. What they get from Kyler Murray in some trade, which I think someone like maybe Tennessee, maybe Green Bay, Raiders. Maybe the Raiders, possibly the Commanders, would be in on somebody like Kyler Murray, especially like the Commanders are the team that I've kind of pegged. They've got Sam Howell. They've got a new owner coming in. I don't think Ron Rivera is going to make it out this year. And like they have 2 1s, a 2, 3 3s, 2 4s, 2 5s, 2 6, and 2 7s next year. Like, they are totally stacked. Plus, they got their left tackle already in this class. They got some other nice little pieces. I think they're totally set up to be the team that's going to take Caleb Williams next year. Oh, you don't have to trust us. We don't actually. we don't actually
guessing as much as anybody else.
Authority. We're just throwing out ideas.
Yeah.
So one last thing, Mike.
Yep.
We are looking to rebrand the show. So Casual GM Podcast has served us pretty well over this first year. We got some feedback. I think it was from Funky that said, like, if you're searching for the show and like you type in something like Detroit Lions roster, our show's not going to come up, right? So, so we are looking to maybe do a name change. We're looking to add a Discord channel if that would be something that you guys would be interested in. And we're looking to try and make this upcoming year more about like what the show has really become.
Yeah. And really fostering the community and like having a cool place to chat, having our own Discord server, all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. Maybe that was Dr. Detroit. I want to throw, rebranding. So like maybe that was Dr. Detroit. I apologize. So we are looking to do that. So this is the name that we're thinking about, Building the Pride, a Detroit Lions podcast. And we're right now we're looking at adding some artwork because, I mean, as much as I like the Casual GM Podcast logo, it's pretty bland. And
it's words, Drew.
It's just words. Words on a white background. Yeah. Oh, it was Dr. Detroit. Okay. So we're hoping to roll that out before the end of summer, hopefully in good order. So if you see that change, just know that it was something that we were trying to do. And then we'll try and make things like the Discord community available to all you guys. Yeah, exactly. So if Arizona's committed to Kyler and they have the number 1 overall pick, they could literally demand the world for Caleb Williams, right?
Yeah.
100%.
So in the comments, shoot us an email. We still have the email address, casualgmpodcast@gmail.com. You can add us on Twitter at casualgm1 on Twitter. But throw stuff in the comments or email us for the things that you want to see us do when it comes to our Discord server, what channels we might want to do, what sounds interesting to you guys. And all that stuff. Please make a space where we can talk shit. We like to razz each other. We can have a shit talk channel. I
will not be a part of it. I will not be a part of it.
So yeah, just let us know what ideas you want to do, or you want us to kind of take a look at, and we'll do whatever seems the most engaging and what you guys want. My final thought on this whole draft, I was a little disappointed with the picks at the spots that we got them. I do think that they're going to be good players. They're going to make a difference for us. And the thing that kind of stuck out to me is positional value is important, especially when you're bad, because you really need to rebuild that roster. I think the teams that eschew positional value for the thing that I need right now, because they got a Super Bowl window, those are the teams that get rid of or don't consider positional value as much. And by taking Gibbs at 12, Campbell at 18, to me, it tells me that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell think they are Super Bowl window teams. And we don't have to take positional value because we just need the things that get us over that hump as opposed to rebuilding. I hope they're right. I hope that all we're doing is filling a couple of specific needs to make us the Super Bowl contenders. But that's when I look at what we drafted, where we drafted them, positional matter not caring to them. The only thing that comes to my mind is they're at the position where they feel our roster is not in a position where we have to focus on positional value. We can get the thing that makes us that Super Bowl, from a playoff contender to a Super Bowl contender. I hope they're right. I hope that these were the things that are putting us over the edge, and we are no longer just trying to get the playoffs. We expect that this puts us over the hump to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl or bust, right, Mark?
I mean, that's what I'm in this for. I mean, like winning a playoff game's nice, but like I want a Super Bowl.
Yeah, Dr. D, it's not a playoff or bust moment. I think this is a deep playoff or bust moment.
To me, to say that this is a successful season, I really want to see him win a playoff game. I think that's progress.
Yep. All right, guys. This was awesome. We will be back next Tuesday, 7 p.m. We'll still be the Casual GM podcast at that point, but sooner or later we're going to be building the Pride. So we will see you guys.